Hi y'all, welcome to the Gamble Ramble vlog. With you as always is myself, host, creator Glenn Archie Gamble. This is my little slice of YouTube, my little corner of the internet where I discuss my 40-year career in the music industry and talk about pop culture, books, movies, music, interview my famous musician friends, and just generally show my love for rock and roll. So for those of you that are returning patrons, thank you very much for coming back. I appreciate your support. And if you're new here, welcome. If you like what you see, you could do me a quick favor by pressing the subscribe button if you like it. Also pressing the like button, commenting. Anything you do like that gets the algorithm moving and affects how my videos are seen in the YouTube population. The more comments, likes, shares, things like that, the more people are going to see my content. So if you want to help me out, you can do that. If you want to help me out on a little more of an advanced level, you can send me a super thanks, which is below. You click it and you send a little cash donation, which is like, think of it as buying me a coffee or a beer, and we'll sit down and talking about road stories. Also, I have a Patreon account, which I'll put the link in the description. And that's $5 Canadian a month, which is about $3 American. And I share stuff on Patreon that I don't share on my other social media accounts like YouTube, Facebook, etc. So basically today's topic concerns my 7-year stint in the Canadian legendary hard rock band Helix. I absolutely loved my time with that legendary band, and it was a highlight of my career. It helped lead to endorsement deals and recognition. Now, I was in a recording act before that. I was in a band called the Buffalo Brothers. I made a very strong album. We had a national number 41 single. We almost broke the top 40, which was the big joke within the band, one step away. And we had some success, but never on the level of a band like Helix. If you look up there, I have a gold record that was gifted to me from Helix leader Brian Vollmer. And today's vlog concerns Brian in a directly and indirect way. So I will elaborate. Brian, for those of you that know, is the only constant member of the band Helix for its 50-year career. And when I joined the band in 1997 to 2004, there were periods of time where for a couple days Helix was just Brian and I, meaning that we went through several member changes. So when there were times when people were fired or quit, that literally Brian and I were the only two men standing. So I'm trying to find the best way to put this. Today's vlog concerns something that Brian put on the Helix Rock Band YouTube channel called The Story of Helix Complete. And I will insert it here. I'll put a link in the description so you can watch it for yourself. And I will also include the footage relevant to me and this conversation in here.
We had the chicks. We had the drugs. We had the tours. We had just about every goddamn thing you could possibly want or desire. And then along came Mr. Buzzkill, the 90s. And the whole thing went to shit. Now, whereas the 80s were pretty good to the band Helix, the 90s, not so much. In fact, if you want to get right down to it, the 90s fucking sucked. We felt like there was this black cloud over our head, raining down tragedy and negativity and bad vibes. The 90s were nearly the death of Helix. But they say what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. And that's what happened to us. We got stronger, we got leaner, we got meaner, we got better. And then finally, one day in 2008, fate collided with the rock and roll gods, and the original 80s lineup of the band, Brent Durner, Greg Hines, Daryl Gray, and myself, got back together. Along with a young kid that looked like Jesus Christ and who called himself the Duck Man. And the rock and roll gods looked down and they said, "It is good."
So within this 6-minute 35-second video, Brian gives a very quick rundown of the history of the band. And I'll be honest with you, I'd never even seen this video until people started contacting me on Facebook Messenger mostly, saying, "Have you seen this?" Now, I gotta tell you, people contacted me with different reactions. Some people were angry Some people were curious. Some people were like consoling. I didn't know what they were talking about until I watched the video, and now I kind of got a grasp on it. Basically, Brian whitewashes over my entire tenure in the band. Starting by saying, like, I joined in 97, which was the late 90s. Starting by saying that Helix, the 90s sucked for Helix, which, let's be honest, they did. Grunge and alternative music were king. It sucked for any hair band or any hard rock band. It was like pushing a boulder uphill, you know? And then basically after that, though, he goes on to skip from the 90s to 2008 with the original band. Original being the Capitol Records lineup of Fritz Hines, Daryl Gray, Brett Dorner, and the late Paul Hackman, of course, couldn't attend, but and Caleb Duck on guitar, who was a great guy. So as was pointed out to me, and I mean by several people, I was completely left out of the history of the band. Now, I would understand that if I was one of these people that came in for a couple shows, or even people that came in for a year, in some cases 2 years. But I was in for 7 years, and not only that, did I helped Brian tremendously in those 7 years. I not only, if you know on the channel, I've said it a million times, I not only played in the band, I also road managed for the last 4 years. So, one friend came right out and asked me, how do you feel about this? And I'll tell you how I feel about it. I don't take it personally because I know Brian, and I know he didn't mean it personally. And still doesn't. If you ask him, if I asked him about it, or you asked him, you'd probably be surprised and not know what you're talking about. Like, what? I didn't mean to upset anybody, and I'm not upset. So let me elaborate. Brian comes from the Bill Sipes School of Management, which I've worked with. Our band Buffalo Brothers, before it became Buffalo Brothers, was a cover band called Nasty Class. And we had the same management company managing us as the people that managed Helix, a division of Bill Sipes Management, EKG Management, Eric Kenneth Gillespie, EKG, who was part of Bill Sipes' organization. And they, you know, the apple never falls far from the tree. Same management thing. And I know that one of the things they teach is always put forth positivity. You know, appear successful. People are attracted to success and want to be around success. So I know for a fact that Brian whitewashing the entire chunk of what he considers to be bad history of Helix in one fell swoop is meant only to do that. So therefore I don't take it personally. Does it hurt? A little bit. I can't lie to you because I worked tremendously hard for Brian and I was extremely loyal to Brian. Now he knows this. If you look up here, you can't see it. You can see the bottom of it. There is a gold record there for the Helix classic album, No Rest for the Wicked. Brian presented that to me after I left the band as a thank you for all my hard work. What had happened was Brian leased the masters off of for that album and several of the early Capitol Helix records off of Capitol Records and reissued them when I was in the band. So I helped them promote the CDs. Capitol didn't have these classic albums on CDs available in the stores. So Brian was smart enough to finance them himself. He leased the master from Capitol and manufactured copies and sold them at shows, and I helped promote it. So he presented that to me, and he, you know, it was a one-on-one. I got together with him at his beloved Tim Hortons on Hamilton Road one day, and he said, "Thank you for everything you did for the band, Archie." You know, he has thanked me, and many times. Now, this public declaration of my entire era being wiped out, I know is not meant as a personal affront to me. Okay, it's not. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I just came up from my walk. I'm still sweating, as you can probably see, and dripping from the entire pore of every pore in my body. But anyway, I digress. Ooh. So I'll elaborate on this in a second, but I wanted to say that there's a second part to the question people were asking. And this one goes back a little further. I got a ton of emails and text messages over phone and mostly Facebook Messenger messages from people when Helix hired a new drummer, and it wasn't me. Because this is a difficult subject to talk about, because I don't want to appear as insensitive to the history of and family and relatives of Greg Fritz Hines, who passed away a few years ago. Fritz was a buddy of mine, and he was a fucking great drummer, and it was an absolute honor and pleasure to replace him, which I did in 1997. When he left, I was one of the first replacement members in Helix. So it was an honor for me to be in that band. And I won't lie to you, it certainly wasn't the first thing on my mind. Fritz's passing was tragic. You know, that was the first thing on my mind, how his poor wife and family and friends, you know, Helix bandmates and otherwise, I felt terrible for them. And I was grieving him as a friend. But I can't lie to you that in the back of my mind, I thought, well, you know what? I did 7 years in the band, and I worked my balls off, and I had a lot of fans in the band. Maybe I'll be getting the call. And again, was I angry that I didn't? No. Was I hurt? Again, as the other situation? Yeah, a little bit. I wish that Brian had at least talked to me about it. Now, I have a very strange relationship with Brian. Like, you know, I love him and he loves me, but we'll go for periods of time where we don't talk for a long period of time. And then we'll hang out. We've been hanging out a bit recently and talking more. You know, as you know, I'll put the link in here, and we appeared on stage with Steel Panther. That was a lot of fun a couple months ago. It was great. And thanks to the Steel Panther guys once again for that. So I asked Daryl Gray about it once, okay? And Daryl told me he felt that it went back to this old issue of the fact that I don't drive. Now, that kind of pisses me off, like as being a reason why I wasn't approached to step back in when they were replacing Fritz. They replaced Fritz, by the way, with the amazing Jamie Constant. Jamie's a friend of mine. Jamie's the drummer from the band Sire from the 80s. Great band. Close friend. You know, there's nothing to do with Jamie. Jamie does a great job. But you would, you know, Jamie aside, having been in the band for 7 years, you would think I would have been in the running. And I did actually think in the back of my mind, I won't lie to you. So Daryl implied that maybe it had something to do with the fact that I don't drive. Now, when I joined Helix, I was in my 20s, okay? Late 20s, but still 20s. And, yeah, I didn't drive, and yeah, I don't drive now. But I mean, things have changed a lot in the last 30 years. I mean, or, you know, whatever, almost 30 years. I would not take a gig and this applies to anyone watching this that wants to hire me. If I accept a gig, don't worry about me getting there. I'll be there. There's Uber, there's drivers, there's options these days up the ass. You don't need to worry about it. If I accept a gig with you, I'll be there, and it's not your responsibility to get me there. I'll take care of it. So that bothered me a little bit, I have to admit, being left out of the running after showing such loyalty to the band, okay? So, but a minor issue. I've never been angry about it, maybe a little hurt, but whatever, right? Life goes on. And it's a business, and I understand. But I'll tell you what is a little bothersome with going back to the original topic of being written out of the history, is that I worked very hard for Brian, and I was extremely loyal to Brian. Now, what Brian doesn't mention in the history, and this is what, if I won't say, again, not angry, but what bothers me a little bit, is he talks about how there was, the phoenix rose from the ashes, basically, I'm paraphrasing, in 2008, and he got back together with, once again, Fritz, Daryl, Brett Dorner, and then a great guitar player, Caleb Duck, which is what happened. But by leaving out my history in 97 to 2004, he's eliminating stuff that happened to bring the Helix name back into the public consciousness and get it ready for a reunion. Stuff that I made happen. And I do not say that lightly. Okay, and I'm going to start. I can't remember the exact order, but I'm going to tell you these things. And Brian knows if he happens to see this. I hope he does see it, because I want him to know my personal feelings on this. I'm not mad at anybody. If Helix called me right now and they need a drummer, if Jamie broke, God forbid, like knock on wood, it doesn't happen, Jamie broke an arm or something, I can still remember the show. I'd step in a second and help my friends out because I love them. But here's two things I want to point out a couple things, okay? I had said to Brian, this is ironic, around 2004, just before I left to join the Joys, and I'll put the link in here about my time with that band and why I loved Helix. I had said to Brian, we had fired a member, and then one member quit because he opposed the firing of this other member. Another member quit too, but didn't follow through, but that's a whole other vlog. So for a couple of days, it was just me and Brian again. And I said, Brian, you know what you need to do? And this is on my mother's life, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Put the original band back together. I'll step aside and continue to road manage, because I'm not going to cut my own throat completely. But as a fan of Helix, who I used to go see at the Brantford Civic Center, you should put the original band back together. This is in 2004. And he said to me, never. And I quote, I'll never forget he said it to me. He was vehement about it. He said no. Because he had fired a member of the band. I won't mention by name because it's not my story to tell. Then they had bad blood between them. And I had defended the member he fired. It was someone I had played with. And I said, listen, whatever has gone on, he didn't do that. And anyway. And he said, no, I'll never play with so-and-so again. I said, okay. But we've hit a ceiling here. We keep going through guitar players. We keep going through bass players. You know, the money has hit a ceiling, and the same gigs, we're doing the same gigs over and over again. If you put the band back together, you can start doing festivals and the classic rock cruises and things like that. And he said no. And then, so shortly after that, I got the offer to join the Joys and left. So, to reiterate what I was saying, to help put the Helix thing back up, and I do hope Brian's watching this because it'll be a refresher course for him. And again, part of the reason I think why I gave him that gold record, he did know, he does realize, but maybe he has forgotten, okay? I tour managed, I took over for Daryl Gray when he left. Brian had so much on his plate in his personal life with his teaching business and band business that I stepped in to help him. And I did a fucking good job. I was honest, balanced the books to the penny. I contacted the Pepsi Power 30 on Much Music, which used to be the Power Hour, and got Helix on the show. Got Brian on the show. Brian had the great idea of them coming to his house. They wanted us to come to Toronto. Like, I was the middleman. I contacted Jessa Capabianco, the producer of the Power 30, and approached her with the idea. And she wanted Brian to come and film it at Much Music. And Brian said, no, have them come to Planet Helix, Brian's house, which has been on MTV Cribs. So we sent them pictures of the house, and once they saw it, with all the Helix gold and platinum records, Helix has 4 gold and 3 platinum records. She flipped, and she goes, yeah, we'll bring a camera crew down and we'll film it. Now for that, Brian was nice enough to ask me to co-host as a thank you, which meant the world to me. So if you can find it, I had it on videotape, but someone went through my belongings years ago, stole all my VHS tapes from my touring history, stole all my books, some of my clothes, and they know who they are. Anyway, I digress. So, that I made happen. And Brian knows that's 100% true. And Brian has thanked me a million times, okay? And now another thing, though. I also got Brian on the sports show Off the Record on TSN, okay? I contacted the producer or director's office of that, Michael Landsberg's show, and Brian and I went up there and filmed it, and he did a great job. Then, I got Brian on the Mike Bullard show. I emailed them, set it up, booked it, and that was the 2002 or 2001 version lineup of Helix with Dan Fawcett, Sean Sanders, Stan Fountain, myself, and Brian. But I booked that. Brian knows that's true. So that's three major things so far. And here's a big one. This is a fucking doozy. I got a message from a friend on Facebook one day telling me that they had mentioned and referenced Helix on Trailer Park Boys. They used to air on Sundays. And told me about how the episode worked out. And I went into the office the next day, to Brian's office. I used to use his computer and phone to advance tours and do business for the band with Brian. And I said, hey, they mentioned us on Trailer Park Boys last night. And Brian said, and I quote, what's a trailer park boy? And I explained the concept of the show to him. And I said, listen, I'm going to tracked down the contact information for the producer-director, Mike Clattenburg. And I'm going to thank them. I think you should send the cast Helix t-shirts as a thank you. Now, I can't lie to you. I don't remember whether or not we did this, but I did suggest it. I did suggest it, rather. So I contacted Clattenburg, and he got back to me. And it turned out he was a huge Helix fan. Huge Canadian guy. He grew up in the 80s. A huge rock fan. He loves Rush as well. That's why, both bands were mentioned on the series. And so after communicating back and forth with Clattenburg, I said, well, I'll put you in touch directly with Brian, which I did. Now, he offered Brian to he flew Brian in to appear on an episode of Trailer Park Boys if they could write it into the show. Now, it didn't make the episode, but it did make a DVD outtakes. And those outtakes made the box set. So if you buy the season, I don't remember what season it is. I'll research it and put it in here. You'll see in the bonus content, there's a scene where Brian is supposed to be putting his name on a Porsche, and he's doing it right by Ricky and Bubbles, who are putting up Ricky's name as new trailer park manager, and he asks them if he can have borrow an R of the letters they're putting up, based on the Helix song, Rock You, Give Me an R. So that was great. Now, and to Brian's credit, he invited me to come with him, and I was really excited when he said, he goes, hey, do you want to come with me? You can crash in my room on the couch. And I went, yeah, man, thank you. He goes, if you pay your own fare. Yeah. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together at that point in time. I was like, yeah, okay, well, there goes another wish, like a fart in the breeze, right? So, I was a little hurt that he didn't offer to bring me with him, but I guess I understand. Brian's good with money, aka tight with the buck sometimes, I'll be honest. No offense, Brian, if you're watching, but it is a little bit true. That said, you own several properties, and you're farther ahead in life than I'll ever be, so you're better with money than me, so I will give you that. Please don't take that the wrong way. But it did hurt my feelings that you couldn't see it through to take me with you after I made it happen. Even just to bring me as your assistant and road manager, But that's fine, okay? But here's the thing about that. Off the record, Mike Bullard, right? Power 30, Trailer Park Boys, all brought Helix to the attention of a new generation, the post-grunge, post-punk, post-alternative generation of young music fans, which led to the time being ripe for a reunion of the band. So all this happened, and Brian also appeared in 2 Trailer Park Boys movies, for which he was paid handsomely, and there were songs from the Helix repertoire that ended up in Trailer Park Boys movie and episodes, I believe. And Brian would get a nice sync license for that too. So yeah, you're welcome. I made that happen. So you can understand how I feel, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'm not angry. I might be a little passionate about it, but I'm not angry at all. I love Brian. But he's lumping me in with people that came in and did one show, or people that came in and wanted the money or the name of being able to say they played with Helix, or whatever, and sweeping them out of the history, when I'm anything but that. I was extremely loyal to Brian. And I'll tell you a funny story on this topic while we're discussing it. I didn't know what this person was referencing, but one time I fired someone from a band, okay? And in firing him, he was very upset and would not accept his part in the firing, like why he got fired, why they got fired. And they deserved to be fired. They were the most unprofessional people I've ever worked with in my life. And he tried to roast me by writing back to me saying, well, I've searched Google about time with your time with Helix, and I can't find anything. He was implying that I was lying, that I had been in the band Helix for 7 years. So I did, out of curiosity, I did a Google search and realized that much of my history has been wiped out in Brian's attempt to get people to look past that dark period of the band, which I understand. But it wasn't all a dark period, you understand? And the things I did and the contributions I made, including picking the Sanderson Center for the 30th anniversary DVD filming and many more things, organizing countless flights, hiring and firing of band members, crew, booking vehicles, payroll, expenses, like, anyway, I did a lot. And to have it whitewashed out of the picture hurts. It does. But I'm not mad, you understand? I don't like that it makes me look like a liar, though. When I discuss it, people go back on the history of Helix and, you know, they Google things and there's no footage because it's all been eliminated, like, or bypassed. And then in stuff like this video, the history of Helix Complete, I'm not even mentioned, or my contributions aren't even mentioned, let alone, you know, I don't need to be mentioned personally, but that you would talk about the off the record, the Mike Bullard show, Power 30, Trailer Park Boys, these things raising the profile of Helix again, and then the reunion happening, and then boom, it's all part and parcel, ladies and gentlemen. That reunion didn't just come out of the clear blue sky because Brian decided one day. I helped build up the atmosphere for that. So to answer it, yeah, there you go. There's your answer. I'm not mad. I've never been mad. I'm a little hurt at the two things. As I said, that I wasn't talked to about coming back onto the drum throne, because I would have been incredibly honored. I'm playing my ass off these days, ladies and gentlemen. I play better than I did back then. I'm a more disciplined, more focused adult person, you know. But I understand. I mean, there's also the connection that Jamie Constant and Daryl Gray, the rhythm section for Helix, play together in their cover band Scurvy Dogs. So there's also that. I'm sure that, you know, that's got something to do with it too. That's fine. I understand. I love everyone involved. It hurt a little bit. I won't lie. But I'm not so hurt that I wouldn't step back in again, emergency, knock on wood, it doesn't happen, situation, they can count on me. I would come back in. I still remember the show like the back of my hand. I loved being in that fucking band. It was great. And, you know, being written out of the history hurts a little bit. It does. It also makes me look like a fucking liar, you know, which kind of sucks, right? Because it gives ammunition to the people like that idiot I fired, who's able to go back, not find, or isn't able to go back and find anything about my time, or very little, on the internet, and then basically call me a liar. Well, what's more important than anything? Some drunk person's who I fired's opinion, or my own, and what Brian thinks. And I know Brian loves me, and we've discussed this. As I said, see, that record, meant so much to me. When Brian's father passed away, he inherited that album back, and we had the CRRA, the Canadian Recording Rights Association, make up a new plaque, and Brian presented that to me. It's an official gold record with my name on it. So I love Brian, and I love Helix. What a fucking great band, you know, and I had a great history with that band. It helped me come out of the failure, relatively speaking, of the Buffalo Brothers, losing our record deal, our album just not selling and not doing what we hoped it would do. And then walking into another situation with a recording act of international renown, okay? You know, so I'm going to close by saying one more thing that I do have to tell you. And, you know, it's actually two things, but I hope, you know, that Brian's aware of this. These are things I should have mentioned earlier because I forgot all about them. They're just hitting me now. Helix had a #1 album called Long Way to Heaven in Sweden. It was #1 in Sweden. And there's a show called the Swedish Rock Festival. I hounded that promoter from when I took over helping Brian in about 99, 2000 to 2004. A couple times a year I emailed that promoter to remind him, we're still here, we're still around. We had a #1 record in Helix, in Sweden. Helix had a #1 record in Sweden. And that eventually led to them getting, I think it was 2005 after I left. Like I left in fall 2004. And then the next year's festival, after me contacting this guy 2004, 2003, 2002, 2001, 2000, 1999, finally said, okay, you're on. And Brian got a booking at the Sweden Rock Festival. And trust me, I told Brian about this. I said, I'm contacting this guy. And I used to email him from my Helix Hotmail account. Otherwise, I'd pull it up and show you. It doesn't exist anymore. And last thing, and I'll close with this, too, was the Alice Cooper tour that Helix did shortly after I left. I think it was the year I left, 2004 or it was 2005, but here's what happened. People may not realize this, but when Alice Cooper plays Canada, the promoter here in London, Don Jones Productions, which is now run by his son Brad Jones, they promote Alice Cooper across Canada. And I sat down with Brian one day and I said, you know who we'd be perfect to tour with? Alice Cooper. And I found out the information that Brad Jones, because I'd played Rock the Park before with Buffalo Brothers, booked Alice. So I said, I'm going to work on this, Brian. Brian said, go to it. And I was relentless in contacting Brad Jones. And Brad Jones, if he's watching this, he can comment and tell you how true it is. And finally, I said, listen, we're perfect. Put us on tour with Alice. Please, please, please. We'll make it work. Finally, they got back to me and said, you get 2 shows, and if they work, you get the tour. Now, the 2 shows we did were the Chrysler Theatre in Detroit and Rock the Park here in London, Ontario. And I did both of them. And guess what? We kicked ass, both shows. We were easy to work with, get along with, and we got the Alice Cooper tour. Later, I quit to join the Joys. Again, you can check the link in the description to see why. And after I left, I can't remember who my replacement was. It was Brett, it was either Rob McEachran or my buddy Brent. I can't remember which. Got the drum thrown and a gig, and then they toured across Canada with Alice Cooper, the tour that I helped set up. And that's a 100% true story, ladies and gentlemen. I'll go to my grave. If anyone wants to argue with me over that, I made that happen. I was relentless in my pursuit of that tour. And I think Brian forgets these things, because I would like to think that he wouldn't write me out of the history of the band so easily, if in fact he did remember that I gave 100% of my heart, soul, and energy to that band. I still love them. I love Brian very much. I love all the guys involved. I miss Fritz. He was such a fucking great guy and such a great drummer. And as I said, the door is open anytime if there's ever a temporary replacement needed. That Jamie is the drummer in Helix Sound. That's how it is. So if anyone, please stop asking me about it. I guess is what I've got to say, because people to this day do. You know, I run into Helix fans. You might be laughing because I've been out of Helix since 2004, right? 21 years. People still ask me about it. I was at last summer. I was at a Def Leppard concert at the Sky Dome in Toronto. Rogers Place, whatever the fuck it's called, corporate bullshit name. Someone asked me for a picture. Came up and said, "Are you Archie Gamble? You used to play with Helix, right?" And asked for a picture. There's a guy that works at my local grocery store. He's always stopped and asked. He stopped me the first time. Said, "You used to play drums for Helix?" And so it happens periodically. It was a great gig, and I really, really helped me keep my profile and raise my profile. And as I said, get and keep endorsement deals over the years, including Yamaha drums. So I thank Brian and Daryl for my time in the band. It means a lot to me. It might be written out of the history, but I know what I did. And more importantly, you know what I did. So to answer your question, I'm not mad at all. I love Helix and I wish them the best, and I hope they have another 50 years. So thanks very much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. That's this edition of the Gamble Ramble wrapped up. I hope I answered your questions, those people that have been contacting me and asking me about this very thing. And I hope I was eloquent, and I hope Brian realizes that I love him. And I tried to be as honest as I could, while also showing that I'm not mad, I'm not upset, anything like that. I've been maybe a little hurt at times, but I'm an adult and it's business, and I understand that. So thanks for your time, and I will give you an R, an O, a C, a K, and what you got rock, ladies and gentlemen. See you next time.
Along with a young kid that looked like Jesus Christ and who called himself the Duck Man. And the rock and roll gods looked down and they said, "It is good." Caleb's been in the band now 10 years. That's a decade. That's a hell of a long time. And so he's written his own chapter in the story of Helix, so give him a hand.
Caleb's a great guy and a great player. He does deserve his own chapter in the history of the band. I mean, after all, he got you on 4 network television programs, which led to 2 movies with international distribution, a tour with Alice Cooper, and Sweden Rock Festival. Oh, wait.